Hey guys, welcome back to Honkai Star Rail. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Blade and if he is worth pulling. Now, as always, let's get the standard disclaimers out of the way. In this game, you'll be able to do everything anyway. Eventually, pull for who you like. That is the most important thing. Also, I always recommend with new characters, we still don't know multipliers, so this is based just purely on the way he functions without knowing his multipliers. We don't know his damage capacity yet, stuff like that. So it's always worth waiting till the characters are out. People test them if you're wanting to know, damage potential and stuff like that. But we can still get an idea of how he plays and some of the synergies that he's going to have. Now, something I've seen in the comments and I've had DMs as well, which is a very interesting perspective, is that I've had people saying, Blade's better for free to play because he's like a self-sufficient unit. He's a hyper carry type unit, so you don't need to build additional units to go with him, kind of like Kafka where you want to build dot units, etc, etc. I think that has some validity, but I also think when I try and think about teams, which we'll talk about at the end, unless you have some of the key 5 stars, he doesn't have the greatest 4-star synergies in the game yet, in my mind. Once again, I'm a P-brain theory crafter. I'm not a big boy genius, but that's just my thoughts, and I'll go through that towards the end of the video. I just thought it was an interesting take and topic to talk about, but as always, guys, just pull for who you like, please. But let's get into this one. I want to talk about how he works, pros, cons, synergies, and teams. And once again, this is based on just purely what they've released on over here with his abilities. We don't have multipliers, so damage, you cannot get a gauge on his damage yet because we will have to wait and see multipliers. So, skill summaries. I'm going to TLDR this as best I can. When you use his skill, it's not going to end his turn. It's going to use a skill point and consume HP, put him into a different state, and increase his damage. And that state lasts for 3 turns. So he's going to use his skill and he's going to be like, I'm still here and I'm ready to attack, but I'm going to deal more damage for 3 turns. Using that also unlocks his enhanced basic attack, which with his enhanced basic attack is going to consume his HP, have max HP scaling, deal cleave damage, so big damage to single targets, smaller damage to adjacent targets, and have no skill point cost because it's a basic attack, but also not generate a skill point. So it's a neutral attack, essentially, kind of like Arlen's skill, if you will, if you want to look at it in that way. So that is the basics between his skill and basic. You're only going to use your skill after he runs out of enhanced basic attacks and leaves that state. Go back, use your skill again, and you're ready to go. Enhanced basics. Away you go. You get the gist. His passive is every time he takes damage or consumes his own HP, he's going to gain a stack of a buff. Once he hits 5 stacks, he's going to do full AoE damage across everyone. Same damage everywhere. And then also heal himself. Then we have his ultimate. His ultimate is going to set him to 50% of his max health. Now, that means if he's below 50%, he goes up to 50%. If he's above 50%, he will drop down to 50%. So, depending on how you're playing, if you're in a spot of trouble, you can use that to heal him up, or you can wait, get healed up, and then use it to bring him down and grant himself another stack of the passive. Essentially the way the ult is working. Also, the ult is max HP scaling, and it does have an additional scaling based on the damage he has taken. So that's another gist that you can get a bit more damage out of that ultimate. So that's his skill summary. Pretty cool. A lot of AoE, still higher single target damage. That's the destruction base, normally cleave based damage, but his passive is AoE. So let's go into his pros and cons that I've jotted down off the top of my P-brain head. So pros, tanky, he's HP based. To get damage, you're going to build him for HP unless the multipliers are completely whack. Based on what we've seen with the new gear set and stuff like that, you're probably going to build him for HP. Next up, he's got heals outside of his turn. I wrote with follow-up attack, but also with his ult. That's really cool, really versatile in manual play to get you out of a pickle. So his ultimate, you don't have to use it straight away. You could wait. If you're in a pickle, you're down to 10% health. You go, okay, I use ultimate outside of my turn. I'm back up to 50. I don't die. Really, really nice. His passive, harder to manipulate because, taking damage gives you stacks. But, if he procs his passive, because it has a heal on top of that AoE attack, you can heal yourself outside of your turn. So 2 heals outside of his turn is not too bad. Self-sufficient. Basically, with those 2 heals outside of his turn, depending on the heal amount of the passive and also how much HP he consumes, I'm assuming he's going to be a fairly self-sufficient unit. Next up, skill point efficient. Super skill point efficient. Use your skill, then you get 3 enhanced basic attacks. You're pretty well set. You get 3 turns of that. happy days. Moving on past that, like sort of an extension of that is he enables offensive Bronya play. So an issue that you can sometimes have with Bronya is that you can't spam her skill because you run out of skill points, especially if, you know, using her with Zila. It's still an amazing comp, obviously, but, you know, if you use Zila skill, Bronya use her skill on Zila use skill again, you're out of skill points. Blade doesn't consume skill points with his enhanced basic. Very efficient. Allows Bronya to do that thing. And also crazy with Luocha, which we'll talk about when we go more into the top synergies in my mind. So let's jump into the cons quickly. Doesn't want shields. So because he gains stacks of his passive when he takes damage, unless they've coded it that taking damage on a shield is considered damage and gives him a stack, you will not want to pair him with shielders. Now, that is an issue because if you're not completely, you know, geared out level 80 with good gear, where you start not needing a tank on a team, if you're still earlier on in the game, it's going to be hard to build like really solid, you know, balanced teams around him because you can't really bring shielders with him if you want him to be efficient. I mean, you can still do it, you just lose efficiency, but essentially you want to avoid shields with him. And then that leads on to the not great free-to-play synergies. Once again, if you are free-to-play and you're level 80, you've got good gear, then you'll be able to find some synergies. Just make Blade work. You just brute force it, essentially, I think. But when we look at his best synergies, they're all pretty much 5 stars in my mind, unless I am completely missing something. So yeah, he's not like... there's no like godly team, like, because I don't think he's going to work as well with Ting Yun as some other characters and stuff like that. So, you know, he doesn't have that like just amazing free team that you can build around him. And then the final con is he consumes his own HP. So that could put you in a pickle. Maybe you consume your HP all the way down to 10% and then someone taps you and you die. Like, could be an issue if you don't manage it properly. Top synergies, Bronya offensively, mentioned it. You can just spam skills. He attacks more, consumes HP more, uses his passive more. You get the gist. I just think that's a great offensive synergy. Both wind elements, so easier to bring into teams. You know, just find a wind-weak enemy. Otherwise, you could use Silverwolf as well, I definitely think. But then for top defensive synergy, it would have to be Luocha. I think people have been telegraphing this combo of Luocha and Blade since before Blade or Luocha were even existed. Before even Star Rail existed, they've been telegraphing that. So that one, obviously, Luocha field, Blade consume HP, attack, heal. Luocha, Blade get low, Luocha auto heal. You know, you get the gist. It's a crazy synergy. So let's jump over into teams. I had this set up earlier. So like I mentioned, I feel like what we will see, and this is, once again, we don't know multipliers. So if Blade's multipliers are weak as hell and he becomes just like a wet noodle nothing character, then disregard this. But if he has half decent damage and works anything like his skills read over here on the wiki, I reckon you'll probably see videos of these two manning every bit of content in the game. Every MOC 10, there will be videos for it. Or at least people talking about doing it and showing screenshots, because it just seems like a crazy synergy. It just seems crazy. So that's what I think. But the one problem with this is maybe if you're doing it with these two, you're not doing it fast enough. Then you add Bronya. That is your team done. You will clear. Like, I honestly think if you're at level 80 with good gear and Blade doesn't hit like a wet noodle, you'd probably be able to do every MOC 10 in half the time you need to do it, you know, in half the double side time. So I feel like you'll clear everything fast enough with those three. And I think that's just job done. Past that, you know, you look to something like Silverwolf. Once again, if you got the wind, you can do that. Silverwolf just has defense shred. You could maybe look at something like Appella as well. For defensive options, how I spoke about not putting shielders with him. So the one defensive option outside of healers that I can think of, pseudo defensive option, would be Welt if you're struggling for survival, because even though Welt isn't a quote unquote defensive unit, he does slow enemies and imprison them, which buys you time. So I think Welt could have a synergy there if you do have a Welt. But once again, if you don't have Luocha, that's fine. If you've got Bronya, you just literally slap in Bailu if you have her. If not, Natasha. It's not as good as Luocha, but you should be pretty fine to go. And if you don't have Bronya, this is where I said it gets a bit tricky, like, because you don't really want to take tanks. Maybe you run something like Pella with Asta or something along those lines. Or I think it becomes, if you're looking at MOC, maybe you just run those two and then just bring break coverage. If we look at Blade in a sense that, he's fairly skill point efficient, maybe if the enemy's weak to physical and you bring Blade, you're already bringing Natasha. Maybe you go ahead and you bring a Su Shang to break more because you're fairly skill point efficient. Then bring another skill point efficient character. Then you got really good physical break. Something like that. I don't know. I feel like it's just going to come down to each individual account, what stage you're battling, if you don't have those units. But to me, if you have Luocha and Bronya, that's just basically probably going to be the staple team that you slap in with him, or you just, I guess, try and solo. I don't know. But that is my thoughts so far. Once again, I'll update you guys once we see his multipliers, get him, test him out, and all that sort of stuff. But those are my early thoughts around Blade. Like I said, pretty cool dude. If you're pulling for him, best of luck. If you're skipping him, hope you get whatever you're going for. As always, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.